President Ijeong is set to attend the Korea-Singapore AI Connect Summit this afternoon over in Singapore, where leaders from both countries will discuss cooperation in artificial intelligence and launch a new Korea-Singapore AI alliance aimed at jointly leading the global AI market. While we wait for the event to begin, here in studio in Seoul, we are joined by Professor Yang Jun-seok. Professor, it's good to have you with us.
Happy to be here.
So AI Connect Summit it doesn't sound too familiar to me. What will this summit be about?
Okay, well, this will be a summit where President Lee, as well as the Singapore Prime Minister, as well as various ministers who are related to AI, will meet with about 150 AI experts, businessmen, researchers in both Singapore and Korea. So people who will be attending include the Chief Technology Officer of Paradetus Grab, which seems to be a portal site in Singapore, researchers from National University of Singapore and from Korea side, people, Kim Jae-won from Alice Group, Jo Jun-hee, who's the chief of the Korea AI software industry group, and so on. So they'll be meeting a wide range of people, both related to business side and research side of AI.
So hopes are high that tight cooperation between Singapore and Korea will happen in terms of AI. Now, the question is, how advanced is Singapore really in terms of artificial intelligence? Where are they?
Okay, well, a lot of people have commented, not just Koreans, but they've commented that perhaps in terms of level of technology, perhaps Korea is, you can make an argument that we're ranked third in terms of just technology level.
Right.
But there's an interesting index made from the global Stanford Institute for Human-Centered AI called Global Vibrancy Tool, and that ranks different categories, 6 categories on how they're doing in AI, and then they make an average index out of those categories. Korea's ranked 4th.
Oh.
The first is obviously the United States.
Right.
The second is also obviously China. Third is India. Then Korea is ranked 4th. And Singapore is ranked 6th.
Oh,
the United
that's not
Kingdom
bad.
is ranked 5th. The interesting thing, though, is that Singapore ranks especially high in terms of talent. In fact, if you just take the talent category, they're ranked 1st above China and the United States.
Oh.
Korea, we're ranked 4th, but we're 1st in none of the subjects, I'm afraid.
Really?
So in some sense, you can say that Korea is balanced. On the other hand, Korea perhaps is not on the forefront of any single category, but Singapore does seem to have a lot of talent pool. In fact, compared to even the United States, they seem to have an absolute advantage in terms of talent. So if Korea can tap into that talent, then obviously that would be great for Korea's AI industry. Korea has advantage in infrastructure and public opinion. So the, people are very looking forward to using AI. Korea is one of the top users of ChatGPT. And in order to get ahead in the AI, you need a large market. Partially, AI is still developing, and the way it develops is basically talking with a lot of customers, using a lot of databases. So the more people you talk with, the more database you use, the better your AI model is going to be. So if we can tap into that talent pool that Singapore has, as well as the fact that they are much more of a global hub than Korea is, then Korea can perhaps have a much better AI industry. And again, same thing for Singapore. They're not ranked very high in terms of infrastructure and public opinion. So if they can make the right deal, then it could be very mutually beneficial.
I see. Well, it looks like President Ijeong has entered the venue to deliver his remarks. Now, for those of you joining us on Arirang TV, we are covering special live coverage of the South Korea-Singapore AI Connect Summit. Now, over in Singapore, currently President Ijeong is in Singapore on a state visit, and on day 2 of his state visit, he held the Singapore held an opening ceremony for President Ijeong, and now the South Korean leader is at the Korea-Singapore AI Connect Summit, where the two countries are expected to discuss to broaden their cooperation in the field of artificial intelligence. It looks like he's about to deliver his remarks. We'll come back afterwards.
논의하는 뜻깊은 자리입니다. 각 분야의 리더들과 함께 양국이 어떻게
So
협력을
with the
강화해 나갈 수
leaders of
있을지
both countries,
이야기해보고자
we will
합니다.
discuss what will be seen in front of us.
네, 그럼 오늘 본격적인 토론을
Now
진행하기에
we will
앞서서
begin
대한민국의 이재명
the panel
대통령님의
discussions, and
모두
before moving on
말씀을
to that, we will
듣도록
have the
하겠습니다.
President Lee Jae-myung to deliver a keynote speech.
대통령님의 모든 말씀이 있겠습니다.
Those who are leading the AI industries of the Republic of Korea and Singapore, business leaders, researchers, and young innovators, it is a pleasure to meet you. I find it deeply meaningful to meet you at the Korea-Singapore AI Connect Summit, which will open a new chapter in the future of our two countries. We now stand at the very center of a great civilizational transformation driven by AI. AI is transforming industrial structures, jobs, and even our daily lives, as well as a strategic asset that has become a core engine determining national competitiveness. This is precisely why countries around the world are devoting their full efforts to securing AI capabilities. Amid these sweeping waves of change, it is both inevitable and most welcome that Korea and Singapore, nations with world-class AI capabilities, have joined hands. Our two countries overcame the limitations of land and resources through the power of people and technology, and achieving prosperity through relentless innovation, an experience we share together. Now is the time to extend that DNA of innovation into the AI industry and together open new horizons for the digital economy. Through the AI cooperation framework, the government of the Republic of Korea will actively support the organic linkage of capital, technology, talent, and industry to ensure that substantive cooperation takes place. First, by 2030, we will establish a global fund worth $300 million in Singapore. This will serve as a primary driver in accelerating the global expansion of AI companies from both countries and in building an ecosystem of joint growth centered on innovation. I hope that young entrepreneurs and startups from both countries will share their spirit of challenge and passion, lead the transformation of future industries, and confidently take the lead in global markets. Second, we will support joint research that breaks down national boundaries. Beginning next year, we will fully launch international joint research and talent exchanges so that researchers from both countries can collaborate closely and devote themselves to developing AI technologies that address humanity's most pressing challenges. We will ensure that the cutting-edge technologies secured through these efforts are widely applied across our societies and further expanded into global markets. Third, we will further invigorate the AI industrial ecosystem through private sector-led cooperation. The AI Alliance launching today marks the starting point of an open innovation ecosystem in which companies, universities, and startups share knowledge and resources and collaborate with each other. I believe it will become a solid foundation where creative ideas are translated into reality and young people can contribute to pursue challenge and growth. Cooperation between Korea and Singapore must advance beyond simple technology exchange to a higher level of strategic industrial partnership. By pioneering new markets based on AI and providing broader and greater opportunities for young people, we must leap forward as an innovation hub that represents Asia. The government of the Republic of Korea will serve as a strong supporter so that the young and talented individuals of both countries may freely take on challenge, engage in exchanges, and design the future together. I hope that today's gathering will serve as a starting point where business leaders, researchers, and young people from both countries can communicate freely and concretize their vision of cooperation. I'm confident that the shared growth of Korea and Singapore will go beyond Asia and usher in an age of AI exploration that leads the global AI industry. Thank you.
귀중한 말씀 감사합니다.
Thank you for your remarks.
That was President Lee Jae-myung's opening remarks at the Korea-Singapore AI Connect Summit taking place over in Singapore. Back in the studio here in Seoul, I am joined by Professor Yang Jun-seok. Professor Yang, what did you think of the remarks?
Okay, well, I think the AI was very important for President Lee, not only in terms of economics, but also politically, because he's putting emphasis on AI as the industry of the future. So if you look at not only what he said during the elections last year, but also what he did with this year's budget, he put major emphasis on AI, and this will be a part of that strategy as well. I was interested in seeing that he started a KVCC investment fund of $300 million US.
Right.
And interesting thing is that fund will be used for investment in Singapore. Now, usually when we have presidents going abroad like this, they want to bring funds into Korea.
Exactly, the inflow.
But this fund will be used in Singapore. That seems interesting. And also, I think that in the end will be more beneficial to Korea. Remember what I said earlier, Singapore's big strength is in its talent pool. And AI will depend on high-level talent. So perhaps using this fund, it will induce more cooperation between, not only more cooperation between Korea and Singapore, but it can be induced to perhaps bring some of that talent pool either temporarily or even permanently to Korea, so Korea can develop its talent pool. And if we can manage to do that, I think it'll be very beneficial to Korea as well as Singapore.
Well, I'd like to mention how you called Korea balanced, whereas Singapore has talent. What greater strengths does Korea have to the table to offer in terms of AI when partnering with Singapore?
Well, the biggest strength that Korea has is the memory chips, semiconductors. So Korea is ranked higher in infrastructure. But if you look at category per category, we have a slight advantage in infrastructure, but compared to Singapore, we're far behind in talent. As I mentioned before, if you look at this index, Singapore's talent pool is rated higher than the United States or China. So they do have a lot of talent pool that we can draw on. Korea, we have our own very talented people working in AI, but perhaps they're not as many as there could be, in part because, well, we've all talked about how Korean science-oriented students tend to go to medical school rather than to engineering or pure sciences. So perhaps this will be an opportunity for us to get some assistance from Singapore to develop our own talent pool further and develop a shared technology. And then also Korea is rated much higher in public opinion, which means more usage. And as I said, because AI is still in a development stage and it depends crucially on conversations between customers and the AI models as well as AI developers, Korea may be a better testing ground than Singapore to get these AI models working. So that may be another mutually beneficial area as well, but also for Korea. Obviously, Korea is behind on making AI models. I mentioned that a lot of people consider Korea to be in the third place for technology.
As of now.
But we're far behind China and United States. In fact, that's true for everybody. So Korea, if Korea wants to catch up with the top two, then will not only need better technology, but we'll also need a wider market to try our models out and get our models to learn. And Singapore, remember, is a hub country.
Right.
It's a very small country, but it acts as a global hub. So once you develop things in Singapore, that could be used to outreach other Asian countries and maybe even Europe as well. So that might be a channel that's open for Korea through Singapore that may not be open if Korea goes on its own.
Well, it looks like Seoul and Manila have strengths that are complementary to both sides. That's a good thing for sure. I'd like to talk about the AI alliance, where this is supposed to be between institutions, firms, and college and startups sharing knowledge. What's the focus of this?
Okay, well, Korea has been attempting to do this, but I think Singapore is much more successful. They have a much more cooperative model between the university, government, and the private sector. Korea's been trying for many years, and we do have university, private sector partnerships, but still, if you compare Korea with some other countries, people in academia tend to stay in academia, people in businesses tend to stay in businesses, whereas in countries like United States, and Singapore is closer to the United States than Korea in this respect, you can go from one sector to another. So the professors can start businesses if they get good ideas.
Less boundaries.
Right. And so perhaps this will give maybe a kick that Korea needs.
That is a good idea to start with, especially when Korea has restricted boundaries among fields and professionals. Now, Professor Yang, then. Now, after this event, apparently 7 AI joint research and business cooperation MOUs will be signed eventually. Now, what steps should be taken next to realize those MOUs?
Okay, well, MOUs, we've seen them signed in the past, and then they just fizzle away because the enthusiasm goes away after the official visit is over.
Right.
So we do need to make sure that the enthusiasm is still there. We do need to make sure that the enthusiasm and the political support that they had before signing the MOU continues. One thing I was very interested in is these 7 MOUs do not just cover AI, they also cover other sectors as well, digital cooperation. And another thing, interesting thing is small nuclear module reactors. So it shows that Korea is still interested in developing its nuclear power industry. That's going to be crucial if Korea and Singapore is going to keep on developing its AI industry, because as we all know, not only the semiconductor industry, but the AI, even wider AI industry really depends on electricity. And in the United States, where they're building all these AI data centers right now, the biggest barrier right now seems to be, do they have enough electricity? And a lot of people believe that China may have the advantage in the long run because they have much more power capacity. Their power generation is growing much more quickly, and they're using multiple sources. They're not only using their traditional power generation like coal and oil, but they are one of the fastest growing countries where you're using more solar energy. In fact, Texas is doing it as well, and AI industry is expanding in Texas. And and wind energy and other type of alternative energy sources as well. I think if Korea really wants to make AI its core industry in the future, we have to think about energy production and the fact that we are still interested in developing and exporting the nuclear power, I think shows that this is one channel that we can work on. It does not perhaps affect AI directly, but if we want the AI to develop, this is something that we have to think about, and Singapore is thinking about this as well. Obviously, if they didn't, then they wouldn't have signed the MOU with the nuclear reactors.
Right. Well, I'm glad you mentioned this. AI and nuclear power are just among the many items on the agenda for the two countries to cooperate. Before I let you go, Professor Yang, what other sectors can we see some close collaboration between between the two countries?
Okay, well, this was not mentioned, but I really wish that they have more talk about finance. Because Singapore has a very developed financial sector, and Korea can, I think, use a lot of lessons in modernizing even further Korea's financial sector. We've been having a lot of problems with foreign exchange rates, and perhaps looking at how Singapore financial sector acts can help us develop the financial sector as well. Another point I want to make is they're also trying to modernize the Korea-Singapore FTA. And Singapore was the second country that Korea signed FTA with, and in a lot of sense, it is, I think, outdated now.
It's been a while.
Yes, so 2006, and they did some minor modernizing here and there. And Singapore is part of ASEAN, and Korea's export to ASEAN is growing very quickly. So perhaps the modernization with Singapore can also be used as a modernization for ASEAN FTA. And if we're going to be stuck, if we're going to have problems with, say, US or China, ASEAN is the obvious market that we need to expand.
Well, one last question, Professor Yang. You mentioned the intensifying U.S.-China rivalry, right, in terms of AI and on the trade front. Now, how might South Korea's efforts to deepen AI cooperation with Singapore be viewed as a balancing strategy? Okay, well,
when a technology is developing, you tend to see a lot of different standards. But then whatever company or whatever model becomes the biggest and more widely used, obviously more global, that tends to set the standard. And once you set the standard, the country that has the standard has a tremendous advantage.
Oh, of course.
Now, I'm not sure if Korea, even with Singapore and some other countries, we can outpace US or China, but we may become big enough so that we have a definite say in how the standards are formed. So that is something that Korea should aim for, along with Singapore and other countries. Obviously, Korea by itself cannot do that, but if we could get enough partners to rally around a common model, Korea, Singapore, ASEAN, and so on, then perhaps we can have a definite say in how those standards are formed.
Right, securing a global position. Professor Yang, thank you so much for joining us. As always, we appreciate your insight.
Thank you.
We also thank you for staying with us throughout our special coverage of the AI Connect Summit between Korea and Singapore. We'll be back shortly with more details on the event in our upcoming newscast. Stay tuned.